There is something moving inside you right now, something most people never notice, though it is more precious than gold, more powerful than fire, and more transformative than anything you could seek outside yourself. For thousands of years, traditions whispered about it in parables, allegories, and symbols. Priests encoded it in sacred rituals. Mystics hid it under metaphors of serpents, rivers, or flames. Scientists measured fragments of its activity without realizing the whole picture. And yet, here you are, breathing, producing this essence, wasting it every single day because no one ever told you what it truly is. Let me ask you, why do you think nearly every spiritual text in history insists that the kingdom of heaven is within you? Why did sages speak of ascension through the spine, of resurrection in the skull, of hidden fires rising through channels unseen? Were these just poetic flourishes? Or were they coded directions to something that could not be said directly without risking persecution? The challenge is simple but profound. You have been trained to look outward for salvation, for miracles, for divine authority. But what if everything sacred begins within your own nervous system? What if the oil of Christ, the celestial dew, the philosopher's stone, the serpent fire, were all different names for one single biological process pulsing inside you? The map hidden in your body. Let's start with what you already carry. You have 33 vertebrae in your spine. Most people accept that as an anatomical fact and move on. But in esoteric traditions, from Freemasonry's 33rd degree to the myth of Christ's 33 years of life, to the 33 stages of Osiris's journey in Egypt, that number appears again and again. Coincidence? Or is your spine itself a ladder, a staircase for something subtler than bone and marrow? At the base of this ladder lies your sacrum, literally named from the Latin word for sacred. At the top is your skull, Golgotha in ancient Aramaic, the place of the skull. Every tradition points to this vertical column as the true temple, the axis where transformation happens. The altar is not in a distant church. It is the chamber between your pineal and pituitary glands in the center of your brain. This is where the sacred oil, produced in small amounts every single day, can rise, refine, and culminate. But here's the painful truth. For most of us, it never gets there. We waste it. How the substance is lost. Think about your daily life. Every burst of anger, every uncontrolled desire, every intoxicant you consume, alcohol, excess food, overstimulation, burns through this essence like throwing wood into a fire without ever warming the room. Sexual energy, perhaps the strongest current of all, is almost entirely lost through indulgence without awareness. The result? You live like a powerful machine running permanently on safe mode, capable of extraordinary perception, clarity, and vitality, but locked into ordinary function. You sense there is more to life, but the switch remains off. This is why mystics warned about guarding the oil, why yogis spoke of conserving prana, why alchemists wrote of transmuting lead into gold. They were not talking about metals. The lead was dense, raw energy at the base of the body. The gold was the same force refined through conscious practice until it illuminated the mind. Why it was suppressed. Now, you might wonder, if this knowledge is so central, why isn't it taught openly? The answer is unsettling. When people realize that divine transformation comes from within, they no longer depend on priests, gurus, or institutions. They cannot be controlled by fear of hell or promises of paradise. They no longer pay for intermediaries to connect them to what was always theirs. History is full of examples of suppression. The Gnostic Christians who spoke openly about an inner Christ were declared heretics and systematically eliminated. The alchemists who wrote about sacred fluids hid their words under ciphers to avoid being burned alive. Modern science, though it has measured aspects of the pineal gland, cerebrospinal fluid, and altered states, avoids connecting the dots because doing so would tear down entrenched paradigms. So the secret remained, not because it was lost, but because it was too dangerous to the structures of power. The emotional weight of forgetting. Pause here for a moment. How does it feel to realize that your entire life you may have been carrying a key without knowing the lock it belongs to? Perhaps there is a mix of curiosity, disbelief, even frustration. Maybe you sense a strange grief for all the wasted cycles of energy, all the nights, all the distractions that burned through what could have been used to ascend your own inner ladder. This grief is not something to deny. It is part of waking up. Because to see clearly is often to feel the sting of what has been hidden from you. But once you see, you cannot unsee. And that awareness itself is the first step toward reclaiming what was forgotten. The biological reality. Let's ground this in what modern physiology actually observes. The pineal gland, tiny, rice-sized, sitting in the exact geometric center of your brain, is more than just a melatonin factory. It contains calcite crystals that vibrate in response to magnetic fields. The pituitary gland, sitting slightly lower, governs your hormonal system like a conductor leading an orchestra. When these two master glands come into resonance, they release compounds that change the chemistry of your cerebrospinal fluid. This fluid, normally a clear liquid protecting your brain and spinal cord, can become charged with neurotransmitters and proteins that dramatically alter consciousness. Near-death experiences, deep meditation, even peak creative states all show measurable shifts in brain activity tied to this same fluid. And here's the overlooked connection. Ancient initiates mapped this process long before neuroscientists. When they spoke of serpents rising, of chrism oil, of sacred fire, they were pointing to a real, measurable ascent of this fluid through the spinal column, the lunar clock. But the process is not random. Just as the tides of the ocean rise and fall under the pull of the moon, your body too follows lunar rhythms. When the moon transits your natal zodiac sign, the sign it occupied at your birth, the pineal and pituitary glands enter a period of heightened activity. This happens about once a month, lasting roughly 2.5 days. Add 3 days of preparation, and you have a 5.5-day window of amplified potential. During this window, the sacred fluid is produced in greater quantity. If conserved, directed, and refined, it can begin its ascent. If wasted, through indulgence, distraction, or lack of awareness, it dissipates, and the opportunity passes until the next cycle. Think about that. 12 or 13 times a year, your body gives you a chance to step onto the ladder. A lifetime offers hundreds of opportunities, and yet most people waste every single one because no one told them the timing, the preparation, or the method. The real work. So what does it take to preserve and guide this essence? It begins with discipline, not the rigid denial preached by religion, but conscious choice. Alcohol dissolves the fluid. Heavy food diverts energy to digestion. Excessive stimulation scatters attention. Sexual release without awareness wastes weeks of production in a moment. Instead, the body requires light food, clean water, calm breathing, and above all, focused intention. The spine must be straight, the breath rhythmic, the mind steady. Mantras, specific vibratory sounds preserved in traditions, resonate the cranial cavities, guiding the fluid upward. Visualization is not fantasy here. It is a way of directing attention to what the body is already doing, shaping its movement through awareness. But most important is inner honesty. Because this rising force does not bypass your psychological shadows, it confronts them. Anger, lust, pride, fear. Each one is a real energetic blockage in the corresponding center of the body. If you have not faced them, the energy will magnify them instead of dissolving them. This is why so many spiritual teachers fall into scandals. They awakened power without cleansing the vessel. The invitation. You may feel overwhelmed hearing all this, but take heart. The path is not about perfection in one attempt. It is about gradual refinement. Every lunar cycle gives you a new opportunity. Every day of conscious breathing and restraint is a step up the spine. What matters most is the decision to begin, because the body is always producing the sacred oil. The question is whether you continue wasting it unconsciously or begin guiding it consciously toward transformation. So, as we close this first part, let me leave you with a thought. If the most sacred treasure of your life is already within you, flowing right now, why keep looking outward? Why keep waiting for permission from priests or approval from gurus? The true temple is your body. The true altar is your brain. The true sacrifice is the discipline to conserve and transmute what is already yours. In the next part, we will go deeper into how this sacred substance transforms as it rises through each vertebra, how it refines itself step by step, and what practical techniques you can apply to begin working with it. But for now, pause and reflect. Will you continue to scatter your essence into distractions, or will you begin to treat it as the treasure it truly is? The 33 stations, step-by-step ascent, and the guardians you meet. When the sacred fluid begins its journey, it doesn't leap to the top. It moves one station at a time, and every station has its own language, its own friction, its own lesson. Think of your spine not as a lifeless column of bone, but as a cathedral with naves and altars. Each vertebra is a threshold. Each threshold houses a guardian, not a mythical monster, but a part of your psychology given an energetic form. This is why the ancient maps speak of degrees, initiations, and stages. They were not allegories for mystics alone. They were pragmatic directions for anyone brave enough to meet their own inner resistance. The base, roots, and heat. The first chambers are down low, sacrum and the lower lumbar region. Here, the current is dense, raw, full of life force, connected to desire, survival, creativity. This is the place where most people live unconsciously. The guardian here is not a villain, it is instinct. It protects you by keeping you anchored in body and species needs. But the shadow side of this guardian is compulsion. When you are driven by habit, mindless consumption, random flings, impulsive anger, the fluid is used to fuel short-lived satisfaction. The practice here is simple and subtle. Feel without acting. Breathe through the impulse. Notice the sensation as energy rather than a command. Slow, focused breathing and light fasting quiet the churn. When you resist the automatic rush to satisfy, you build a reserve. This reserve is the first refinement, dense matter beginning to temper. The middle, power and boundary. As the current climbs through mid-spine, it meets the solar region, the seat of will, identity, and personal power. Here, the guardian is pride, competitiveness, the stories we tell ourselves to feel strong. Pride can be a raw material for courage, but it also crystallizes into defense mechanisms that block the flow. How do you work with pride? Recognize where you need to defend and where you don't. Practice honest expression paired with humility. Use breath to soften the tightness at the solar center. Visualize the fluid melting rigid defenses into warm, malleable light. When the energy passes this station, it feels less like raw force and more like directed power, a flame that serves rather than consumes. The heart, love, and its mirrors. Higher up, the current reaches the heart center. This is often the most tender threshold because it forces you to confront how you relate to others and to yourself. The guardian here is attachment, the tangled web of expectations, hopes, and resentments that masquerade as love. Attachment blocks the ascent. It turns subtle energy into drama, dependency, and cycles of hurt. The practice that dissolves it is not denial, but radical clarity. Feel your needs, speak them honestly, and let go of the stories that make other people responsible for your inner weather. Compassion is not softness here, it is discriminating kindness. When you neutralize attachment, the fluid becomes a luminous stream of empathy that nourishes rather than clings. The throat and mind, voice and truth. Above the heart, the current passes the throat and then enters regions where voice and thought shape reality. The guardian here is false speech, the stories you keep repeating to stay safe. Lies to yourself, evasions to others, and habitual justifications act like valves that divert the current sideways into self-deception. The remedy is clear. Speak with truth and listen without immediate reaction. Chanting specific vowel sequences, sounds that ancient traditions preserved because of their psychoacoustic effects, creates vibrations that loosen the knots in the throat and head. When you practice sound with steady breath, you literally rearrange how the fluid moves. The mind calms, and the current becomes more reflective than restless. The crown approaches, integration, and the thalamus. As the fluid ascends the final vertebrae, the work shifts from clearing to integrating. The guardians here are not aggressive. They are the quiet residues of identity, old ambitions, subtle fears, the last clinging threads that keep you separate from the larger field of being. Confronting them requires gentleness and precision. This is where shadow work becomes essential. Deep meditation, prolonged self-observation, and honest inquiry reveal the small, persistent narratives that still siphon energy. It is not about defeating them with willpower. It is about witnessing them until they lose their grip. When the fluid reaches the thalamus, that central chamber between the pineal and pituitary, it no longer carries only chemical potency. It carries refined information, patterns of perception, new neural pathways, a reorganized mind. Scientific studies that explore brain changes during prolonged meditation show increased connectivity between regions. This is the physiological fingerprint of what tradition calls illumination. The fluid bathes circuits that were dormant and helps them form lasting bridges. The result is not supernatural in the way some expect. It is simply an expanded range of cognition, perception, and presence. You become less reactive, more aware, and more able to hold paradox. Techniques that work. Practical, not magical. Practice is not about imitation. It is about sculpting your nervous system with consistency. Start with the lunar window. Prepare 3 days before the moon's transit through your natal sign. Simpler versions of this are always valuable. Choose a silent series of days once a month to practice with intention. During those days, reduce stimulants, hydrate well, and eat light, whole foods. Avoid alcohol and excess sugar because they literally dissolve subtle gradients of energy. Move with care. Your posture must be aligned. When you sit, imagine an invisible cord from the base of the spine to the crown. Keep the chin slightly tucked so the channel is not kinked. Resting the tongue at the roof of the mouth completes a circuit many traditions recommend. Breath is your lever. A measured pattern, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, creates subtle pressure differentials. Those pressure waves move cerebrospinal fluid. Over sessions, increase duration slowly. Safety comes first. If you feel dizzy or overwhelmed, return to normal breathing and ground with a walk or gentle movement. Sound guides the internal architecture. Soft, sustained vowels tuned to your body, pronounced with intention, not force, create resonant cavities that stimulate the master glands. Mantras are not mystical passwords. They are tools that shape vibration. Combine them with visualization. See a golden, viscous fluid rising slowly, vertebra by vertebra, refining into light. Shadow work must be integral. When energy provokes a surge of jealousy, rage, or lust, do not redirect it immediately outward. Bring it into conscious observation. Ask, what wants attention here? This is the only way the energy can be safely transmuted rather than absorbed by unresolved patterns. Safety and tempered courage. This path is not about dramatic fireworks. It is about steady refinement. People who rush often experience what tradition and modern case studies call Kundalini syndrome: burning sensations, pressure, dissociation. These are not signs of spiritual grace. They are signals your nervous system is being overwhelmed. Slow down. Seek psychological support. Integrate with therapy, somatic practices, and grounded daily life. Cultivate community. The inner journey is intimate, but listening to others who are walking the path with care can prevent isolation and hubris. Teachings that ignore psychology are irresponsible. Teachings that only speak about psychology and ignore the subtle aspects miss the fullness. The integration of both is where lasting transformation arises. The new grounded life. When this work becomes steady, it changes the way you inhabit the world. You no longer need constant external validation. Work becomes an expression rather than a lifeblood. Relationships become mirrors for growth rather than sources of wholeness. Small pleasures remain, but they no longer consume the store of precious energy. Curiosity replaces compulsion. Clarity replaces confusion. In place of frantic searching, you live with a quality of attention that feels like a soft, constant light. Neuroscience calls this improved connectivity and changed baseline activity. Mystics call it the birth of inner light. Both point to the same phenomenon: a brain-body reorganized to function with more integrative coherence. The practical invitation. You don't have to believe everything in this talk to try the practices. Start with breath and restraint. Choose one lunar cycle this month and prepare your body 3 days beforehand. Clean your intake. Practice a breathing pattern each day. Sit with one vowel tone for 5 minutes and watch how your body responds. Notice which vertebrae feel tight. Notice what stories arise when you slow down. Name them, breathe through them. Make a simple pact with yourself. Show up for 5 minutes a day for 30 days. If 5 minutes feels too small, begin with 2. Small, steady action rewires the nervous system more reliably than dramatic retreats that end with burnout. The body rewards continuity. As this part closes, remember, each vertebra is both a gate and a teacher. Each psychological guardian you meet is an aspect of you asking to be seen. There is no final point where everything becomes perfect. The work is iterative, patient, and humane. The sacred fluid is not a prize. It is a living process that helps you become more fully who you are. You are not being asked to renounce your life. You are being invited to inhabit it more deeply. So ask yourself now, which guardian are you ready to meet this month? The lust at the base, the pride in the middle, or the attachment in the heart? In the next part, we will map specific practices for each station, share a sample 30-day protocol, and give guidance on integration so your daily life supports rather than sabotages the ascent. Living the practice, cycles, protocols, and integration. By now, you know the body holds a hidden ladder. You know the sacred substance that moves through your spine can refine itself step by step, vertebra by vertebra. You've also met the idea that each threshold is guarded by a part of your own psychology. The question becomes, how do you live this knowledge in the messiness of everyday life? Because, let's be honest, insight without practice dissolves like water poured onto desert sand. It feels nourishing in the moment, but it doesn't last. Practice is the way to let the water sink deep and turn desert into fertile ground. The lunar rhythm, your monthly appointment. Think of the moon as a cosmic metronome. Every 27 days or so, it returns to the zodiac sign it occupied at the moment of your birth. This is not fortune-telling, it is simple astronomy. For 2.5 days, your glands produce the sacred fluid in greater intensity. Add the 3 days of preparation before this transit, and you have a 5.5-day window every month that acts like a natural initiation period. Here's a way to work with it. Preparation: 3 days before the transit. Eliminate alcohol entirely. Reduce animal protein and heavy food. Drink plenty of clean water, 3 liters a day if possible. Herbs like mugwort or peppermint, known to improve circulation and mental clarity, can be supportive. Sleep well and avoid unnecessary stimulation. The transit: 2.5 days during your sign. Keep meals light: fruits, raw vegetables, simple grains. Stay away from sugar and excess salt. Prioritize quiet, focus, and steady breathing practices. Keep the spine straight during meditation, with the tongue resting gently on the palate to complete the energetic circuit. This monthly rhythm is your anchor. Even if the rest of your life feels chaotic, you know that 12 or 13 times a year you have an appointment with your own biology. Each cycle builds on the last. You don't have to succeed perfectly. Consistency itself is the progress. Daily practices: the micro steps. The monthly cycle is powerful, but daily habits are what carry you between peaks. Here are practices you can weave into ordinary life without needing to retreat into a monastery. Breath work. Use the square breath pattern. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold empty for 4. Practice for 5 to 10 minutes. This creates subtle pressure waves that move cerebrospinal fluid up the spine. Sound. Choose one vowel sound each day, like E, head, Ah, chest, or Oo, lower belly. Sustain it on the exhale for as long as comfortable. Notice where your body vibrates. Over time, these vibrations create acoustic resonance in the cranial cavity, stimulating the pineal and pituitary glands. Visualization with feeling. Instead of imagining abstract beams of light, visualize a golden, honey-like fluid rising through the vertebrae. Feel the warmth, the viscosity, the subtle pressure. Link the image to actual sensation. Shadow work. Whenever a strong emotion arises, anger, lust, pride, pause. Don't suppress it and don't feed it. Observe the sensation in your body. Breathe into it. Ask, what does this guardian want to show me? Over time, the blockages dissolve not by force, but by awareness. Body alignment. Each time you sit, whether at work, in the car, or during practice, align your spine. Think of your vertebrae as open gateways rather than compressed segments. This simple posture becomes a constant micro-practice. The 30-day protocol. Let's bring it together in a way that feels actionable. Consider this a sample month. Days 1-3, normal life, but observe your habits. Notice how often you scatter your energy through food, distraction, or indulgence. Keep a small journal where you note patterns without judgment. Days 4-6, preparation days. Reduce stimulants. Hydrate more. Eat lighter. Begin gentle breathwork morning and evening. Cut alcohol completely. Days 7-9.5, transit days. This is your focused period. Prioritize meditation twice a day. Keep food minimal but nourishing. Chant vowel tones with each breath session. Visualize the golden fluid rising vertebra by vertebra. Observe any psychological guardians that appear and meet them with patience. Days 10-30. Return to ordinary life, but keep 1 or 2 practices daily: breath, posture, or sound. Continue journaling emotions and responses. This is integration. Repeat the cycle next month, adjusting based on what you noticed. Psychological work, facing the guardians. You've heard already that lust, pride, anger, attachment, and false speech are guardians at various stations. But let's make this practical. Lust. Instead of suppressing desire, notice where it arises in the body. Feel the warmth without rushing to release it. Let it transmute into vitality. Anger. Observe the contraction in your solar plexus. Breathe slowly until the tightness softens. Speak only once the heat has cooled. Pride. Watch the urge to defend or dominate. Instead, choose humility. Not humiliation, but a quiet strength that doesn't need to prove itself. Attachment. When clinging thoughts appear, ask, is this love or fear of loss? Redirect the energy to compassion that doesn't demand possession. False speech. Notice when words diverge from truth. Each small dishonesty knots the throat. Speak less but with honesty, and the current flows freer. These are not abstract virtues. They are real energetic blockages that affect how the sacred fluid travels. Safety nets. Preventing burnout. Because this practice deals with energy and psyche together, there are risks if rushed. People sometimes report heat in the spine, cranial pressure, or overwhelming visions. If this happens, ground yourself by walking barefoot on earth. Eat a heavier meal temporarily to stabilize energy. Take a cold shower to cool the system. Seek support if psychological patterns feel unbearable. Remember, forcing the current upward when channels are blocked does not liberate you, it destabilizes you. Patience is protection. Integration into ordinary life. The goal is not to escape life, but to live it differently. Here are some shifts you may notice as you continue. Entertainment loses its grip because silence becomes more vivid than noise. Superficial relationships fall away, replaced by deeper bonds. Work without meaning becomes intolerable, but clarity emerges about your real direction. Compassion grows naturally, not as a moral effort, but as a perception. You see through masks, but instead of cynicism, you feel understanding. Neuroscience has names for this: improved hemispheric synchronization, increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, altered neurotransmitter profiles. Traditions have names too: illumination, Christ consciousness, liberation. Both point to the same reality: your nervous system reorganizing toward wholeness. The long view. Think in years, not days. A lifetime may hold hundreds of lunar windows. Each one is a chance to refine a little more, ascend a little higher, dissolve another blockage. Over time, the oil becomes more subtle, the ascent smoother, the illumination more stable. You don't need dramatic visions or paranormal powers. Those may come, but they are byproducts. The true result is quiet clarity, lasting peace, and an unshakable sense of being at home within yourself. A final invitation. So here we stand at the close of this journey. You've heard about the sacred substance flowing through your spine. You've walked through the guardians and their blockages. You've been offered monthly and daily practices to begin refining and guiding the current. The real work begins not with grand promises, but with a simple decision to treat your own body as the temple it has always been. Ask yourself, will you let another cycle pass, scattering your essence into distractions, or will you mark the next lunar window as your starting point? The treasure is already inside you. The map has always been in your body. The altar waits in your skull. And the kingdom of heaven, as every true teacher has said, is within. The choice is yours.